Yep, we're ready to go.
Great. Welcome everyone. This is the ordinary meeting of the Council on the 27th of July 2021, held via remote technology. I now hand you over to the Acting Chief Executive Officer, Kirralie Toomey.
Good evening, councillors, and welcome to the ordinary meeting of Blue Mountain City Council. This meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed. An audio file and a link to the live stream is available from the council's website, and the audio recording will be available on the council's website for 6 months after the upload date. As all statements made at this meeting will be recorded, your image and your voice may be recognised and other people may be aware that you've been in attendance at the meeting. Your continued attendance at the meeting after this statement is made is taken as your consent to your image and voice being webcast. All persons in attendance at this meeting, whether addressing the council or making comments that may be detected by their recording equipment, should refrain from making any defamatory comments or from releasing any personal or confidential information about another individual without that individual's consent. The council is not responsible for the statements of any individual made during this meeting. Any defamatory statements or any statements which include personal or confidential information are the sole responsibility of the individual who makes them. The council's code of meeting practice sets standards of conduct for the council meeting. If any person in attendance at the meeting acts in a disorderly manner, or if a person makes defamatory or unacceptable comments, then the meeting may be interrupted by the Mayor or by me, the Acting Chief Executive Officer, and appropriate action taken. This meeting must not be recorded by any party other than the council, and members of the public have been invited to provide submissions to items on the meeting agenda in advance, and any submissions received have been provided to councillors. I ask that you please welcome the Mayor.
Thank you. Dear God, we sincerely seek your blessing on this council so that its deliberations may advance your glory and the true welfare of the people of the City of Blue Mountains. The City of Blue Mountains is located within the country of the Darug and Gundungurra peoples. The Blue Mountain City Council recognises that Darug and Gundungurra traditional owners have a continuous and deep connection to their country that is of great cultural significance to Aboriginal people, both locally and in the region. For Darug and Gundungurra people, Ungurra takes in everything within the physical, cultural and spiritual landscape: landforms, waters, air, trees, rocks, plants, animals, foods, medicines, minerals, stories and special places. It includes cultural practice, kinship, knowledge, songs, stories and art, as well as spiritual beings and people, past, present and future. Blue Mountain City Council pays respect to elders, past and present, while recognising the strength, capacity and resilience of past and present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Blue Mountains region. Thank you all very much. Councillors, we have no apologies for tonight. Before I do the ordinary meeting that was held on 29 June and sign it as a true record as at today's date, I just want to say something in relation to the last meeting of council. We ended the last meeting of council having suspended the meeting temporarily due to some rulings I made from the chair. I'm not going to proceed to deal with those matters tonight. I think we can let that go. But I have demonstrated that I will apply the code of meeting practice as I'm required to as chair of the meeting. However, I've reflected upon what occurred at the last meeting and I will not proceed with a ruling of an act of disorder. Because councillors, we're in pretty challenging and uncertain times at the moment. We're faced with the second postponement of the election, and the impacts of the pandemic are affecting our community very deeply, as you all know. And at times like these, I think that our council needs to really show how well we can work together. And work together we must as an act of collaboration in a time when collaboration is most needed. With this in mind, I acknowledge that these council meetings are formal meetings of the elected governing body of the city, and they must be managed in that way. Councillors should respect the formal meeting process, even in a remote meeting format. Councillors have to also be respectful of each other and for the role of the chair. The role of the chair, no matter who's in it, must be respected. Please don't interject or cause interruption. Please don't speak over others, and please don't interject or speak over the chair, however you might feel about the individual occupying it. Councillors should not make assertions about each other. And as we seek to work as one single governing body, such comments, if they occur, bring us all into disrepute. As I said, this meeting is managed in accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice. If the need arises, councillors may call a point of order and it will be ruled upon. If councillors fail to follow proper meeting etiquette, I will be forced to call out those actions. I will be forced to address them, and I really don't want to have to. We stand here together as our community's elected representatives, and people look to us. And we have to do that for another 4 months. So I look to you all to stand by each other, to respect each other, for each other's benefit, as well as the benefit of the whole community. So thank you all for that, councillors. There are no apologies. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes of the ordinary meeting that was held on the 29th of June? It's moved Councillor Vanderklay, seconded Councillor Hollywood. Minutes are a true record. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Matter of urgency number 1, and I'll just read the matter of urgency. It's seconded the Deputy Mayor, that the Council writes to the Federal Health Minister, the Honourable Greg Hunt MP, urging a greater emphasis on vaccination rollout, and that the Council notes that under the New South Wales State Emergency and Rescue Management Act, councils make facilities and buildings available on request to the Combat Agency, in the case of a pandemic, New South Wales Health, and that Blue Mountain City Council, in supporting that requirement, offers facilities that may be temporarily utilised by the state government for this purpose. It's been seconded. Councillors, I said in a media statement recently that I recall too many years ago, I think it was 1971, going up to and you can start timing me, Storm, going up to the Ryde Civic Centre. And I remember back then, in 1971, the promotion was Nettie Needle and was it Nettie Needle and Susie Spoon, and you got the needle in the butt for various things, which people don't do today. It's not polite. And you had a spoonful of this dreadful syrup, which I think immunised you against polio. And I remembered then that councils played a very good role in providing facilities that governments could use to vaccinate the community. Of course, my preference would be that we'd have registered nurses attending those sites and administering those vaccinations. But I don't think it hurts for us to say to the government, we're here should you need us. Our facilities are here should you need us. We're keen to play a role. The vaccination rollout has been vexed and troubled, and I think it's clear that our community is suffering as a result. It's been a botched rollout, there's no doubt about that, but we need to look forward, not backwards. And I think this is just a simple offer we can make that may or may not make a difference. I'd like to see local hubs in communities where communities can get the vaccine easily. And I don't like to think of some Blue Mountains residents having to travel too far afield to get vaccinated. So if we can provide local community hubs and support, the announcements that have been made today around pharmacies, provide more locations where our local people can go and get vaccinated, I think that's a really good thing. And I hope that it's something that will spread across some local governments in the rest of the state. There's not much more to say unless the seconder wishes to speak.
Just that we ask everybody to get vaccinated, and totally supported. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Brown?
Yes, I support this, and I just want to say that I also feel the council needs to encourage people in being kind to one another. What we're seeing on social media and even in all the crime stoppers, the people dobbing each other in, there's so much attack on people for doing the wrong thing. I think we have to realise that for some people, these lockdowns, they are not a good solution. The vaccination is a much better one. The lockdowns is having a terrible impact on some people. And some of us are in better positions than others. And it's recognising that if a person isn't working lives on their own, it's terrible for them. If they've got businesses like the taxi drivers, it breaks my heart to see them sitting there making almost nothing, but they're still having to work. What they're getting is so little, and then apparently they can get money or help from the government, but they have to be computer savvy, they have to have all sorts of understanding. So even what money is available, not everyone knows how to get it. I think the financial, the mental impact, particularly of the second round of this lockdown, is really, really heartbreaking. And I think people just have to not be turning on each other and trying to catch each other out for doing the wrong thing or working when they shouldn't be or whatever. And we just need to encourage that at the same time as saying, yes, really, the vaccination is important, because lockdowns are just terrible for us, both financially, economically, and socially and psychologically. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to pass on some comments that I received from a very genuine constituent today who, in a fit of exasperation, rang a local councillor. Obviously, it's a state and federal matters take predominance, but simply to say, why don't they just go and make everybody get vaccinated? Why don't the authorities say you will go to this place at this time? And I can recall those injections, particularly the polio one, which tasted ghastly, Mr. Mayor. And I was in 6th grade, I think, when I got it, and that I don't have fond memories of that moment. Nevertheless, the benefits, the health benefits, are substantial. And I'm just will pass on the commentary from a constituent that may be worth thinking about, that it's simply a time to say everybody will go, and obviously whether it's mandatory or not is another issue, but it's requested to go get vaccinated at a certain place, certain time, and then it's done. Because I fear we're going to eke towards a higher percentage of vaccinations, and the lockdowns are indeed having a dreadful impact on everybody, and the uncertainty is good for no one. So I'll just leave that commentary there.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Hollywood.
Just a very quick point, fully supporting the mayoral matter of urgency. I just want to remind people that with everything that is going on, we often forget that at the beginning of the pandemic, when we moved to the National Cabinet arrangements, as opposed to COAG, local government lost its seat at the table, a decision that was made by the federal government. And we know that Local Government New South Wales and ALGA and the other representative bodies have been saying to government, local government is here. We want to partner with you. We are the closest tier of government to the community, and we can be part of the solutions. And I think when you look at the vaccine rollout and the schmozzle that it is, I think it's a real shame and a real wake-up call for the fact that local government doesn't currently have a seat in the National Cabinet. So I hope that we can think about that as well as we think about this mayoral minute.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything further? Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, I think it's important to remember to check on our elderly neighbours in this time who may not be able to get out or have their vaccine shot, just to make sure their health is okay at this period of time, would show a little bit of old-fashioned love.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything further? There's one matter before us. It hasn't been spoken against. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Mayoral minute number 1. Councillors, this has moved me, seconded the Deputy Mayor. I brought this report forward thinking tonight would be the last real meeting of the council, because the final meeting is a bit perfunctory. It's not, but I just wanted to remind the community that this council's actually done a pretty good job, frankly, in setting a strategy for managing our council, the organisation, sustainably, including our finances. I think we're probably noted as a council that pushes hard on the environment. We're probably seen as an environmentally progressive council. I think we're probably seen as a progressive council generally in terms of social policy. But what's often not noted is that we've also been, I think, prudent managers. We have had, in this term of council, the Black Summer fires, we've had multiple rain events, we've had a public inquiry into the council, a lot of disruption, and yet we've continued to reduce debt. And I know there's some debate about whether we've gone too far on that or not, but be that as it may, wherever you fall on that argument, I think you'd have to say we've done a good job. The time that, for example, that I've been in this role, debt for the city has just about halved. And we managed to keep the organisation stable during periods of shock. The things I listed off a moment ago were all shocks, and of course, preparing for shocks is part of the 6 strategies for financial sustainability. So what I really just wanted to do was to acknowledge that I think all of you, each councillor, each member of the executive team, right down to the front line of our workforce, everybody has done a very good job at managing the council sustainably, both in terms of our footprint in the world environmentally, but also financially. While I don't sort of like to coin a phrase, I think we're an environmentally and socially progressive council, but we've also been a financially prudent council, and we've operated strategically. I hope that future councils will continue to do that. It's interesting, when I came onto this council some years ago, the finances weren't managed as sustainably as they are now. And it's interesting, we are rolling out more infrastructure than any of our predecessors. We've got the biggest infrastructure program in the city's history rolling out at the moment. There's more infrastructure in the city now than generally than when I got elected, and yet we're not running big deficits, and we're not running a financially unsustainable council. And I think that's a credit to everybody in this meeting, but also everybody in the organisation from the front line all the way through. So I thank the Deputy Mayor for seconding that. Are there any other comments? Councillor Brown.
I'm not supporting this. It concerns me that we are putting forward this idea that we've been financially sustainable. I would hope we would have learned that many of the practices haven't been. It's not what you have in the bank is not what matters. Our role is to make sure that we are sustaining our assets, that we are proactive on risks. What the council's had a pattern of, and which we have found with all the reports about the council, is our problem with being reactive. So in terms of these 6 strategies, I consider them a wish list. And that's a good wish list. They're an aim. They're 6 aims. They're not strategies, they're aims. I mean, no one's going to disagree with avoiding shocks or balancing the budget, but how do you do it? And I think, it's not about preparing for shocks, it's actually about avoiding them in the first place. And I think that has been the weakness, that until it's accepted, will happen again. So the asbestos, which I still don't know the full costs, but I think it's 15 to 20 million, and we know we still haven't cleaned up some of it, that we still have those costs ahead of us. That, of course, it went back over years, particularly Katoomba Tip. That went back over 10 or more years, actually. So it's not just this council by any means, but Lawson would have been avoided if we'd had the asbestos management plan in place. What happened with the council is it allocated $1 million that no one could explain why that wasn't spent in 2013 to 16 on safety. So that lack of being proactive when we needed to be. And where I am nervous is I'm still seeing that happening, because we keep saying it's all about how much money we have in the bank or not. No, it's not. It's whether we are proactive on risks and on opportunities, and also renewing our assets so that we don't have possible disasters ahead of us. Now, one of the things we've seen is that, we had 19% renewal of assets in 2015. It's supposed to be 100. Then for some years we were up to around 35 to 39. Now suddenly, miraculously, we've added 3 million and we're up to 66% renewal. We're still not renewing our assets. So that is an intergenerational cost that we're putting forward. I don't consider it financially sustainable. I think we keep talking about addressing it, but that is not happening. You know, Lura Cascades, if that landslide hadn't happened, would we have discovered that the culvert hadn't been maintained and was at risk of collapse? You know, that's the culvert that goes under the road. In some ways, the landslide led to something being discovered that wasn't discovered, that needs to be renewed. And so I think there are real problems that we're still not acknowledging them, that actually we have to spend more. Having a surplus doesn't mean anything if you're doing it by putting off costs that need to be spent now to prevent the sort of disasters that we got from asbestos. I mean, and I'm just going to say here, I want to talk about very quickly the Lura Area Traffic Management Plan. It's been put off and put off. 4 years now we're waiting for it. One of the most important things in that was Railway Parade, a really dangerous road, just a goat track. It's really across a hanging swamp. It's so unsafe. It's been acknowledged again and again by this council, yet we still haven't dealt with it. We still haven't made that we're doing playgrounds and so on, but we have a road that people have to walk on because they're on a mountainside with no edge. And they walk along it. It's got blind corners. It's not even as wide as 2 cars. It's still got a 50k speed limit. It's insane. And why that's been put back, that is such a priority. And that's what worries me, that I feel that sort of infrastructure, which we have to deal with it, because it's not just reputational risk, it's risk of life and limb. And it's also the ongoing, that's a subsiding road anyway. There's massive drainage problems there. I think we have asset renewal problems that we have to get across, and then we will be financially sustainable. So it's not about whether we're saving money or got money tucked away or reducing debt. We have to start investing. And so for me, that is why, and it's not to blame anyone here, it's to say that the mindset needs to change. And I think that we need to prioritise the real spending we know we need on, not just on new shiny infrastructure, but actually on the infrastructure we've got and the renewal. That's what the special rate variation was about, and we need to be doing that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I commend the report. I think it's excellent, and it does testify to the prudent management of our council finances. And I just point out that, you know, our debt wasn't cut by 50%, it was cut by more than 60%. It went from
Thanks, Don.
$59 million to 21, I think, or $20 million, a considerable thing. And the significant thing about that is that it has freed up, something like $4 million to support our service delivery, and indeed to address the required renewal and maintenance of our built assets. So that's a practical response to needs that the council identified in 2013.
Thank you very much, Councillor McGregor, and you can lower your hand now. Councillor Fell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to make the same point that Councillor McGregor made about the enormous savings or reduction in loan costs, and note that there's actually an additional $4 million saved in reduced interest and principal costs. And also to note that our asset renewal program is ramping up. We are replacing more of our assets than we were previously. And that's in the face of the one thing that always strikes me. We are confronted with an almost unique situation in that we're a fairly small council in terms of numbers of residents, our rate base, and yet we have over $1 billion worth of assets. And that's, in effect, that is the problem we have, trying to get on top of the maintenance and replacement of those assets. But that is something which I note with a great deal of pleasure is now being addressed far more than it has been at any time in the past since I've been on council. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fell. Councillor Schreiber. You might want to go off mute, Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And regarding the asset renewal, I have an elderly lady in Blackheath who has been waiting for repairs since the 3rd of September 2020. And she put in a CSR, and I have the number of it, and I've spoken to staff about it. And with all the heavy rain, they couldn't get there to do anything about it. She had to go and buy her own barriers to put there to stop people from driving into the gutters and so forth, and then wrecking her driveway. I just feel we've done very good, but I think somewhere along the line, we have to think about our community that have these problems and who are seem to think that they are being overlooked, which I'm sure that's not right, but that's the way they feel. And the long-term financial planning, again, Mr. Mayor, is about the Leura Town Centre and the way we were trying to handle the parking with buses and so forth. Even though we've got no tourists and no buses there at the moment, we still haven't got any further with that, which is another major problem we could have down the track. As we know, with once we're out of COVID, we're going to need to see all these tourists come back, and we've done nothing about the finishing off the bus strategy in Leura. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Vanderklay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we put this strategy in a fair while ago, but one of the things that we fell foul of was fit for the future. And I remember distinctively that the state government made us be more financially sound and better, and we were able to do that with our 6-point plan. We were able to reduce our debt, increase our capital works program and our renew program. Some councillors believe that it's not being done properly, or we're not doing enough. You know, we're spending more money on our capital works program than ever before, than I've been on for all the years I've been on council. So it's a credit to not only the staff, but also to the council as a whole to make sure that the council is sustainably sound financially. And we have seen it over the last few years, the bushfires, the COVID and everything else, and we are still financially sound. And that's very, very important, because you cannot do what we have to do if we're not financially sound. And if we borrow more and more money, we might get the job done now in the next year or so, but what's going to happen after that? We won't have the money. And when we first started this process, we had no money to do capital works program. The capital works program was about $4 or $5 million. And that's why we stuck to this 6-point plan. And I recommend that we should carry on doing that.
Thanks, Councillor Vanderklay. Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A certain councillor talked about mindset, and quite frankly, I'm fairly shocked that something that is a positive report, taking a step back over the last, well, it's effectively 9 years really, that we've had this plan, and looking at what we've done in spite of the massive challenges that we faced as a council, particularly in the last term, over the last 5 years. Our mindset needs to be positive, it needs to be constructive, and we need to think about the great work that we've done together as a whole council, and that includes all of the staff and particularly the senior leadership team. One of the things that I want to highlight is that part of the Asset Works program that we've got in the investment is in fact the way in which council officers have chased down grants, huge grants. When I was elected to council, people said our playgrounds were crap. They needed improvement, and we are delivering that in spite of comments made by another councillor that in fact playgrounds aren't a priority. Well, I'd like people to know that certainly from what I've heard from our community is that playgrounds absolutely have been a priority. But more than that, when I think of the money that we have wasted in relation to responding to requirements in the asbestos crisis, the money that we had to spend in relation to responding to orders by Safe Work that were found not to stand up to scrutiny from the Ombudsman, that we've been put under so much pressure and still we've come out with a good story to tell. It's absolutely extraordinary. The community needs to know and remember how much money was wasted and spent on the fact that we were having to test and retest at sites for where there was allegations of asbestos. When it was put into scrutiny and investigated by the public inquiry, we were fully and publicly exonerated. We were working on fixing, as I've said many times before, we were working on fixing the issues with asbestos in May 2017. And then everything became hopelessly politicised in October, November 2017. And that has cost our council an enormous amount of money. But we've been able to weather the storm. We have come together, we have worked together, and we are in a strong position with the largest Assess Works program, much of which is renewal. And I would also say in relation to some of the collapse of roads and issues that we faced, they are not, absolutely not, to do with simply not renewing infrastructure. They are to do with the massive flooding events that we had, which are extreme weather events caused by climate change. And we are not the only council experiencing the challenges with our roads. All councils are, because of the fact that we are dealing with here and now the impacts of climate change. And we are investing and trying to fix that as well. So I think we need to take what I would call a strengths-based approach and actually look at the good work that we're doing. And this report absolutely gets us there. And put aside a lot of the negativity, leave that behind and look forward to what we can do working together. I will be supporting the report.
Thanks, Councillor Hollywood. Councillor Hua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hollywood. I think you've really taken the wind out of my sails and said just about everything that I had intended to say in response to this report. I do thank you deeply for your observations and support them wholeheartedly. Look, I think the numbers in this report speak for themselves. Fundamentally, the shocks that we have faced can't be avoided. They are coming at us, and they are coming at us faster and with more fury than we can possibly know. I encourage all councillors and everyone in attendance to just spare some thought for those who've lost their lives and their properties in floods across the world, in bushfires across Europe and across North America, and just pause for a moment about what is waiting in store for us. We are on the cutting edge of cities around the world that will be impacted by climate change. It's my intention to suggest, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected onto the next council, that we should look at modifying the avoid shocks strategy and to brace for shocks. There's only one thing that's certain in this very uncertain world of ours, and that is we ain't seen nothing yet. There are more and more of these shocks from extreme climate events, from extreme flood events, from extreme fire events. Who knows what will be the next pandemic that lies around the corner? But I think this report shows that we are in a very good position to face up to those shocks. And I fully commend the Mayor for this report. I think it shows there's been a vast improvement in the way the organisation has been run in the last 8 years, and certainly in the last 5 years that I've been privileged to be part of this organisation. But I would warn the community that there are those out there who don't share my vision of the future, who just want to return to a very small government role of focusing on our roads and rates and rubbish and letting development rip and at whatever cost. And there may be some sympathisers with that view among us tonight. But I think this community needs to stand up and to acknowledge the fantastic work that our council has done in this term of government and placing Blue Mountain City Council at the very vanguard of local governments working for climate change, for real climate change policy in this country, to try and ensure that our kids don't have to live with the sorts of events that we're seeing gathering on the horizon. So I fully support the report and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. Anything further? There's nothing further. It's been spoken against, but I don't intend to exercise my right of reply. I'll put the matter. All those in favour? I'll call it. Councillors Greenhill, Fell, Christie, Miles, Hoare, McGregor, Fernanda, Vanderclay, Hollywood, Bowling. Against? Councillors Schreiber and Brown. There's a surprise. All those in favour, all those against, counted. Declare it carried. Thank you. Chief Executive Officer Performance Review Panel. Move the reports. Move the Deputy Mayor. Seconded Councillor Hollywood. I'll put the report and then we'll have to elect an extra member. All those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. I think it only falls to us now to elect an extra person. I've had one nomination indicated to me, and that's in the name of Councillor Hollywoods. Moved Councillor Vanderclay, seconded Councillor Hoare. Are there any other nominations for that position? Being none, I'll declare Councillor Hollywood elected unopposed. Take a motion that that be confirmed. Move Councillor Vanderclay, seconded Councillor Fell. All those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Executive Officer, there's nothing else we need to conclude with that. I'll take the silence as a no. All right, we'll now deal with items on which the community, on which the councillors wish to speak. I've pulled out myself items number 3, 10, 12, 14 and 16. Councillor Fell, I'll come to you next.
They're the items that I was interested
Coincidental.
in. Absolutely.
Councillor Christie, any you want to pull out?
Yes, item 12 you said was pulled out, correct?
Yeah, item 12's out, yep.
Yep. 18, and that's due to conflict of interest.
And 18 due to a conflict of interest. Okay, conflict. Actually, I've erred there. Before I go any further, actually, I'll deal with this and I'll come back to conflicts. Are you intending to leave the room on that, Councillor Christie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other items? Councillor Miles? Councillor Hoare, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Brown. Yeah, what do you want to pull out?
I want to pull out, did 4 get pulled out?
4 is not pulled out. I'll pull that out, shall I?
Out. 10 is out, isn't it? 11?
10 is out. 11 I'll pull out. Yep.
Sorry. You've got 16 out.
Yep.
Or 25.
25, Pracey. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Schreiber. You're all good. You're all good. Yep. Councillor Fernanda.
Already pulled out.
Already pulled out. But Councillor Bowling.
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Hollywood. Content. Councillor Vanderclay.
Number 24. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
24. Thank you. All right. Thank you, councillors.
I want to pull out, sorry, I want to pull out 5.
Yep, 5, gotcha. Right. All right. So the following will be moved in globo. 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, S1, 15. 17, S3, 19, 20, S2, 21, 22, 23. Let's move Councillor Vanderclay, seconded Councillor Hollywood. All those in favour, against, declare those carried. in Globo, which brings us to item number 3. It's moved Councillor Fernandez, seconded Councillor Hua. Councillor Fernandez has the call.
Thank you. I saw this report definitely. Reading through it, I think probably all of us, and in the briefing, were blown away by the work and the high calibre of our staff to secure the grants in the recovery process. For those who are logged in with the community, if there are any out there, as you are aware, the impact of the disasters and multiple disasters, so not just from the bushfires, the flood and COVID, this has had a detrimental effect on our community. The economic, the environmental, the social, the psychological impacts have been so long lasting and very deeply felt. We've just seemed to try to get over one disaster and then we've been compounded and compounded again by another. It's like being in a boxing ring. We've just kept being punched back down, our community. The grants that we have secured are going to go a long, long way in helping that process for our community to heal and get back on track. This isn't going to be something that'll happen overnight, but reading the report and the astonishing economic effects of $560 million of economy that's just drifted out of our community with these disasters, 80% of our world heritage has been destroyed, over 2,200 jobs which have been affected or lost because of the disasters that we've been facing. It's amazing how our community, and it's just through our community spirit that keeps us going. But these grants that we've secured, and there's multiple grants, and I really encourage the community to have a look at what has been granted to us and to take the recognition that this has come from the hard work of our staff putting in the grants, relentless hours, tireless days, stress, the emotional impact that it's had also on our staff, but to get through these grants for our community to start recovering. I'm just blown away by what has been given to us, and it's not without the want of trying. And it is going to go a long way in helping our community get back to a stage where we can probably finally get on our feet. Every little bit of financial assistance helps. But the grants go through, affects all areas. It addresses the economic impacts. It addresses the social. It addresses the psychological. It goes through and addresses all those important areas that actually our community has been suffering for a good couple of years, really, since the bushfires, as I said, floods. COVID has taken a massive toll on the recovery process, and both a financial toll. Just when businesses were starting to get back on track, our tourism started to pick up again, and the economy was starting to look like it was going to take a roll. COVID has come down and wiped us back down again. So I really want to thank the staff, not just from myself, but I'm sure on behalf of all the councillors and our community for putting in all these tireless hours and the effort to secure these grants. It's just phenomenal. Thank you.
Can the Deputy Mayor take the chair briefly, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and you have the call.
Yeah, councillors, thank you very much. One of the things I do want to highlight is that in the first round, this council received no Blur grants. We received no funding, and as we know, there was quite a public controversy around that because the majority of the funds in that first round went to government-held seats. Obviously, I did a lot of work with other mayors, attracted a fair bit of publicity, pushing hard on that issue. I did want to thank Peter Fitzsimons, who backed Blue Mountains in very strongly in his column during that time. But I want to thank all of you as well, because this council unanimously, it didn't matter what party or persuasion people were from, you all backed that call, and I thank you all for it. While the government overlooked us on that first round, you all did not, and you all did a tremendous job in supporting that campaign. The fact that we raised our voices and made a noise The fact that we were heard no doubt assisted us in receiving a better outcome with stage 2. I had several phone conversations with federal officials saying, calm down, you'll be right on the second round. And indeed, it turned out to be the case. I do note that that money comes, while it's very welcome, 18 months after the fires, 18 months after many businesses and members of our community had already succumbed to some very difficult times. That said, we can be happy with the final outcome in stage 2, but never forget, you all played a role and our campaign played a role in making sure they couldn't miss out on the Blue Mountains plight in the second round. We made our voices heard. Deputy Mayor, I'll resume the chair if I may.
You have the chair, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further councillors wish to speak? Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to comment on the funding that small businesses receive direct for the bushfire and COVID grants. Some $21 million went to small businesses across the mountains, which I think is a great. They did very well to get that. They did their applications right. They were helped by our staff in putting in these applications, and for them to receive direct to those small businesses, 21.4 million, I think is great. There was something in the vicinity of over 3,880 grants granted. So that all helped as well to help us rebuild confidence within our business community. And with the help of the council, I think this has worked out very well. And with a lot of those businesses are still on their feet because of those grants they received. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schreiber. Councillor Brown.
Yes, I'm going to support that. I'll just say, I just note that as Councillor Schreiber said, there was 21 million, which also did include some COVID money, but that money was early. I mean, that was before the previous Blur grant. And so it was early money from the bushfires that went direct to the community, not from Mr. Barillero's office, but from nevertheless from the Liberal government. And that has to be acknowledged. I do also want to acknowledge that David Shoebridge actually did, the Greens MLC was the one who actually revealed the unfair distribution of the Blur grant from Mr. Barillero's office, and said they had the inquiry, the upper house inquiry into it. So have to acknowledge that work. And the other acknowledgement I'd like to make is that yes, Councillor Fernandez is right that the staff had to work very hard, but a lot of these grants, the work was actually done by the community, unpaid. You know, they worked really hard. That's very hard work. And, you know, for instance, Blue Mountains Tourism were involved, the Blackheath Golf and Community Club, for the golf course, that was their hard work. The Blackheath Hall, the committee, a lot of hard work has been done by this community, and that's very important that we recognise the way they will step up and give unpaid time to generate this sort of return to the community. So it's just, again, us recognising the great value of the people who live in the Blue Mountains and who do a lot of hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your advocacy. You're one of the few mayors that seems to be able to get space in metropolitan media, which makes an enormous amount of difference. And I was very pleased to see that 10 of the grants that we received went to Ward 1, which was, of course, was the most heavily impacted of the wards in the Black Summer fires. But it is regrettable that the bank application for funding for a refuge in the event of bushfires was not accepted. I think that was one of the best of the grants. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Anything further? Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's mostly been said, so I won't go over old ground. But the fact that this city was ringed on three sides by raging out of control bushfires, with our tourism industry devastated as a consequence of the lack of visitation, and yet we didn't qualify for any of those initial grants, is an absolute disgrace and should not be forgotten. And I note some of the commentary from, among others, the Honourable Shane Mallard, crowing about the fact that these sums of money have been given. They should have been given straight away. If the fund isn't big enough, enlarge it. The impact of the East Coast bushfires on many, many councils was far more than would have been expected. Simply, they need to expand the budget. And I would like to think that after the 2013 recovery and now this recovery, that there probably will be another recovery. But whichever government is in control, I hope that they prioritise everybody equally.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Is there any further? Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you. Just a quick couple of points. The first one was, I believe that a councillor suggested that it was the exposure of the fact that the grant allocations from the state government in that first round in September this year was exposed through the public in the Upper House inquiry and the Greens. My understanding is, in fact, it was exposed by the media and by a particular Michael West Media, who actually did an analysis of where the funds were actually going. And at the same time, there was that inquiry going on. So just want for the public record that we remember it was a very busy time. There was a lot going on when you think about it, and the media did play a role as well. But fundamentally, I think the key points are that we, in that round, we, amongst a number of other councils, missed out on significant funding. And that funding was, in fact, to help our economic recovery, and it was to help our community that had been so badly impacted across the board. Our community was so badly impacted by the Black Summer fires. Not only did we have our emergency services working night and day, not only we had the families who support our emergency services impacted, but we had every single person in our community impacted. And the fact that we were overlooked and disregarded by a hopelessly politicised, again, a word that seems to come up quite a lot at the moment in terms of how we're dealing from a policy perspective with the crises that we face, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's the bushfires, and indeed the flood events as well, where we've really seen the government not step up as much as they should in relation to that as well. So I just want to remember that I want to say, and for all, it's important for us all to remember that our community did miss out on grants that were critical to our community's recovery. And thanks to the Mayor's advocacy, we haven't been overlooked, and we have received significant funding in this next round. And I want to pay tribute to the particularly the funding that we've received for the Grand Cliff Top Walk, and just the fantastically positive feedback that people have across the community have relayed to me, and I'd like the officers to know that as well, just how important repairing the Charles Darwin Walk and continuing that walk is for our community. So let's not forget that as much as there's a lot of dollars there and there's a lot of great community projects, at the end of the day, the New South Wales government overlooked our community that was impacted by the fires in February 2021. They forgot about us, and it wasn't until we had the advocacy that that we've now received some additional grants. But there's no going back. We missed out in February 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Anything further, councillors? There's nothing further. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, I'm remiss, I didn't call for declarations before. Councillor Christie has already declared one in relation to the item that has been pulled out, item number 18. And I take it that's a significant conflict. Councillor Christie, is it pecuniary or non-pecuniary?
Non-pecuniary. My son plays tennis for the club.
So significant non-pecuniary, and you'll be leaving the chamber for that particular vote. Thank you very much. Any other declarations? And again, I apologise for not calling this earlier, councillors. No other declarations. Thank you very much. And again, my apologies. Item number 4, I think Councillor Brown, you pulled this out. Did you wish to move something? You'll need to go off mute to communicate that.
Yes, I wish to move this with an amendment.
Okay. So you want to move
move a substantive motion. I'm going to move that motion, but I have amended clause 3, which I think you've seen.
Yep. Okay. And is that seconded?
I think it's by Councillor Schreiber.
Councillor Schreiber. There we go. And it's foreshadowed by Councillors Hollywood and Vanderklay, the unamended recommendation in the business paper as a motion should Councillor Brown and Schreiber's fail. Councillor Brown has the floor.
Thank you. So in the amendment is to change the fact that the way the advisory committee set up at the moment, the membership, the appointment of them, the removal of anyone, the extending of their tenure is all managed by the chair, who's Councillor Fell, the mayor and the CEO. None of that comes back to the council. I find that extraordinary. This advisory, we've just all agreed to $3.5 million to buy back land that council sold some years ago, well, with the clubhouse on it. So we've made a big investment, an investment that meant that, for instance, when other really important properties like Goldsmith Place came up, we didn't even think about going for them. We've really put a lot of money into this. The idea that 2 councillors, both from the same party, but that's not just the thing, that two councillors will be making such major decisions. Really, the Planetary Health Centre is just a concept at the moment. It doesn't have a lot of tangibles on it. That advisory committee, and I have no problem with the people who are sort of currently suggested, but that advisory committee is going to be critical to really being down, to pin down something that works for us both as a financial, as a financial project, really, something that is sustainable. We're going to need a lot of advice from them, but we also need to make this work because we've invested a lot of ratepayers' money already. That is our responsibility. There is no way that the general manager with 2 councillors should be making such important decisions, including deciding when we get reports from this advisory committee who are advising us. I mean, it beggars belief to me. It is also something that, and this doesn't matter hugely, but I will point out that neither of the 2 councillors involved have actually experience in the particular disciplines. Now, in itself, that's not the point of their role anyway. But obviously, if you bring in 12 councillors, you are bringing in 12 councillors' expertise and knowledge and insights. And that is why we have 12 councillors, not 2, to govern the council. I think this is far too much of a project to be narrowing it down and putting so much of it away from the council, and also from coming to council in a very formal and consistent way so that the public know what is being advised as well. So for me, this is so much about governance, about drawing on everybody's expertise, drawing on everybody's knowledge, and also everyone being responsible for something that the whole council voted to do. So from my point of view, as I said, it's such a missed opportunity. It's something that we should all be interested in. We should all be going along to the advisory committee meetings when we can anyway, which we're entitled to do, of course. But certainly who is on that committee or who might be removed from it, that's got to be done in a very formal way. It cannot start to be seen to be a cabal of people with a small crowd and a couple of councillors controlling it. That is really poor for the council as well. So both in terms of how it's perceived from outside and also from drawing on the collective wisdom, if you like, of this organisation, as well as the normal processes for an advisory committee where decisions about the membership always come back to council. There can be recommendations, sure, from the chair and whatever, but it needs to come to council when membership changes. And I feel like that, to me, is just so fundamental to how the advisory committees are run. I think this is setting a really dangerous precedent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schreiber, do you wish to speak?
Very quickly, Mr. Mayor. I support what Councillor Brown said, but I think this is so important issue that maybe the minutes of the meeting could come back to council as well. So that way all councillors know what is going on there with the Planetary Health, because I think it's important we all walk down this path. We all put our hand up to go this way. So I think it's important that we then we get the minutes and have an idea what is going on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I think the CEO indicated that would be the case. Councillors, I'll put the motion standing in the name of Councillors Schreiber and Brown. If it fails, I'll bring on the foreshadowed. We have one motion before us standing in the names of Councillors Schreiber and Brown. I'll put it. All those in favour? Councillors Schreiber, Brown and Christie. All those against? Everybody else, declare it lost. I now have a motion in the name of Councillor Hollywood and Vanderklay, which reflects the recommendations in the business paper as a motion. I don't believe it needs to be spoken to. I'll put it. All those in favour?
I want to speak against it.
Oh, you want to speak against it? Okay, well, we'll hold that and we'll hear from Councillor Brown again. I know
Yes.
we'll all...
Yeah, well, I'll go on. As I said, I think this is a project. The Planetary Health is an idea that can capture the imagination of our community. They like that. So when they hear the words, they like them. But it was not included. We went ahead and did this. We went ahead and did this without it having any consultation with the community on us spending the money. So there was an opportunity to buy the land. So we didn't say, well, we'll wait till we've gone through a master plan and we check whether people like the idea and they think we should use. So we have made a whole lot of leaps and jumps without checking with the community and bringing them with us. So there is a lot of different views about this at the moment, partly because there is not a lot of information yet. And even the memorandums of understanding, there's been quotes about them, but they've never been made public. So it's all just, what is it? What is it? What is it? So to now go into a position where we are again keeping this in a very tight, it's about being tight instead of being open to me, that to even say that, as Councillor Schreiber said, really the minutes should be coming. They should, and if there has to be some commercial aspects, but this is an advisory committee, they're not actually, they can just advise. They're not really involved with commercial aspects of it anyway. So we should be knowing what they're doing. It should be coming to council. The minutes should be coming, certainly at least quarterly reports, but more importantly, that who is on that committee needs to be through a process that is very open to the community, not a matter of quiet appointments, not going through formal meeting process. I think that is just so dangerous. Having set this whole thing up in a bit of a rush without consultation, we're now people are going to be appointed without the councillors being involved, but actually for that reason, nor the public. They're not going to know either. It's just people can be moved, can come and go. It doesn't have to come to council, or the general manager might want to let it, but she doesn't have to. Nothing has to be told. And for me, that's I find it really strange. Why put the council in that position when this is a project we really, really want the community to be on board with? This is part of them being on board. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, I'll take you to take the chair for a moment.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, you've got the chair. You've got the floor.
Thank you. All of those matters will be reported to the council, and there will be, as the CEO made clear to all councillors, regular reports on the business paper about all such matters. And before any changes are made, we would bring them to council if we could. If they were brought out of session, they would come to council for confirmation later. Thank you. I'll resume the chair. Is there any further debate on this? Or we just put it? We'll just put it. All those in favour? All right, councillors Greenhill, Miles, Hoare, McGregor, Fernanda, Vanderklay, Hollywood, Bowling against, Christie was in favour. Thank you. Against, Councillor Schreiber and Brown. I declare it carried. Thank you. Item number 5, Councillor Brown, you pulled this out. Want to move something?
Actually, I wanted to ask a question.
All right. Before doing that, I need to get a move and seconder. So it's moved, Councillor Hollywood, seconded, Councillor Vanderklay. Councillor Brown with a question.
Yes, the fact that the council has taken off in the council law is taken off in March 2022, is that as required by the Office of Local Government, or is that something that is coming from within our staff recommendation?
I'll take that question, refer it to the acting CEO. My understanding was that it was a requirement of the OLG to remove councillors, but I'll seek confirmation from staff.
Ms. Burgess, could you confirm that for us, please? It's my understanding that that's correct.
Yeah, it was mine too, that the OLG asked for the councillors to be removed. Anything further?
Speak to it, if I can.
Yep, it's been moved and seconded. I'll just see if the mover and seconder wish to speak first as a matter of order. Mover and seconder, you content not to speak to this?
We're content. I'm content.
Yeah, Councillor Hollywood seems content. Councillor Brown.
Yes, I mean, this is for me a huge concern, because one of the things that came out so clearly in the public inquiry is, again, that there wasn't proper information coming through to councillors. And so I find this breathtaking that the Office of Local Government are yet again stopping one of the few vehicles that councillors could have for actually knowing that things are going well, that that things are risk is being managed, both financial and otherwise. All those things, whereas at least before there were 2 positions for councillors, although they were not voting positions, they could be there. And so this is just so concerning to me that I can see it's good. The CEO is getting advice, but we get a report once a year. I find that, as I said, really concerning. I mean, it's difficult because I'm not exactly speaking against it, because I don't want to have no committee, but I'm just noting that I really flag this as extremely concerning, that the councillors are cut out of one of the few ways we can have of risks being flagged before they become a disaster. It's back to avoiding. I'm a big believer in the avoiding shocks, I don't take Councillor Hall's view that we want to brace for them. I want to avoid them. And I think this is one of the committees that's there to help with that. So as I said, I feel I'm going to have to vote for it because it doesn't seem like there's any choice, but I am just really noting my concern about councillors not having 2 councillors not having a position, or 1 councillor even not having a position. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderklay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were 2 councillors on that committee. I was one of them, and the other one was the mayor. Now, I was the only one that had voting rights on the council, on the committee, and the committee was as is an independent audit and risk committee, and I can understand where the OLG are coming from. They want to make it completely independent of the governing body and the executive staff, so they can review all of those, the audit and risks of the council, and then report it to the council. And I can understand why they want to do it, although I can understand where Councillor Brown's coming from. She believes that we should be in there. I can tell you that they're very dull and boring meetings after sitting through them for a number of years, as you would know. So now I will be supporting the recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anything further? There's nothing further. There's one matter before us. Councillor Hua, you wish to speak, do you?
Yes, look, a reflection was made on something I said earlier in the meeting. I'd just like, for the record, to clarify that the reason I think council needs to brace for shocks is because, unlike some amongst us, I avidly follow the climate science. I listen to what the scientists are saying, and I understand that there is so much momentum in the climate system that nothing we say or do around this table or anywhere else is going to enable us to run and hide from the shocks that are coming down the road at us. It's merely prudent, wise, financial and environmental management to prepare our organisation and our community. And can I say how happy I am to see the funding that's been given by the Blur grants to the resilience community.
Sorry, Councillor Hoare, I think you've dealt with a matter of explanation. We are dealing now with an OLG recommendation on the order.
Well, if Councillor Brown has concerns about the OLG recommendation, she should raise it with them.
Councillor Hoare, I don't want to call you to order. I've given you the personal indulgence. You've explained your position. Thank you. There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 10, I pulled this out. That's because Councillor Fell and Councillor Hollywood wish to move the recommendations as a motion. It's moved and seconded. Does anyone wish to speak to that? Councillor Brown.
Yes, I won't be supporting this. I did raise a few concerns in the briefings, and I noticed that we still have the idea that councillors have a right to request information. Actually, they have a right to receive information. It's very nice to say we're allowed to ask whatever we want and we'll see what we give you. We actually have a right to receive information, and that right is not just through the Local Government Act, but also through the Information Privacy Act. We are entitled to information unless there's a very good reason why we shouldn't have it. And the CEO has to be very clear about that. It's not something of just a subjective choice. And it concerns me that we've got that. And then we've even got the idea here that councillors will be able to stop some councillors from asking questions if they think they're diverting too many resources. You can't ask that question. You're asking, it's going to take us too much work to answer you. That sort of, to me, it's staggering. We went through a public inquiry and we found out that no one knew that the council was no one with authority anyway, and apparently no one knew that we were non-compliant for 5 years in safety, even though there were two very damning reports by Willis Insurers. No one knew. Despite all the memos, no one knew, and the councillors didn't know. So to have something here where what the tone of it is all about, you can only ask so many questions, and if you ask too many, we'll start voting that you're only allowed a number. This is like, I mean, we're in this age now where we've got this huge battle. I suppose Julian Assange is the epitome of that, of saying government has to be accountable. And as councillors, it is our role to make sure that we do know what's going on. The fact that we didn't know for so long about compliance, we should all be taking that as a warning about needing to ask questions. And quite honestly, it's the same with the Waste Goose building. I went through that with the Waste Goose building. No one had asked for the reports. It took me months to get the reports agreed to and I had to fight for my right to that information. I don't think any other council ever went in and read all those reports, but they made it very clear the building wasn't going to fall down and that it was fixable. And actually that the cost of doing that was 1/10 of what people had been led to believe. So for me, having spent 5 years and seeing how important it is to ask questions, and for people to say, well, you've asked too many, or it's going to take too many resources to find out, about the overcharging of the bins, all these things that we've had that have had to be looked into, they require us to ask information. And the tone of this is all about even the idea that you could have a council politically vote to shut someone down. I'm sure no one here would want to do that. But that's what I'm reading. So that's why I'm not supporting this, because I think the tone of it is disturbing at a time when we need open government. We really need it, and we need to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, I might take the chair, give the chair to you briefly.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, you have the floor, or the Zoom, I should say.
Thank you. Councillors, I think the policy should be characterised slightly differently. Imagine for a moment that you lived in a different universe where you were on a council and there was one, maybe two councillors who were incredibly disruptive. This is not our council I'm referring to, of course, but maybe you have one or two councillors who are determined to bring the council down. You may have one or two councillors who make a whole range of allegations that don't turn out to be true. You may have a council or councillors who cost the city millions of dollars. You may have a council or councillors who pull out items and speak on them to slow the meetings down, to undermine the agenda of the council. You may have, we don't, but you may have councillors in some parallel universe who do that. And it's in those extremes that the governing body needs to be able to regulate itself. Because at the moment, you could be in a circumstance where one councillor could bring about enormous cost to the community. Of course, not in our case. One councillor could bring enormous damage needlessly to the reputation of a council. Councillors do need to be able to control the occasional unruly councillor, because actually, at the end of the day, it's the community that has to pay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll resume the chair.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, and if I may speak to...
Yes, I'll take you now, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Hollywood.
Just very, very quickly, Mr. Mayor. Look, in the 21 plus years that I've been on council, every time that I've asked for a document, a request of information, whether it was confidential or whether it was a report or anything like that, I never had any problems in getting that information. Even if it was a confidential report that the staff didn't want to go out of the building, I made the effort to get up to the council offices there and have a look at the document and go through it. So from my experience, the policy has worked all those years. It's the way we operate, and I totally support it, and I'll be voting for it. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor van der Clay. Councillor Hollywood has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Initially, I just had a question through you to the relevant staff to clarify, really, for the benefit of the anybody that might be listening. This policy, can I clarify that this is a template from the Office of Local Government?
Acting CEO.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Hollywood.
Thank you. Councillor Hollywood.
And I'll just say a couple of words. I mean,
Now we'll start the clock, because last time a couple of words nearly went all the way to the time. So Councillor Hollywood has...
Oh, okay. Well, I'll try to be quiet, sorry.
You're right.
Look, the bottom line and why I asked that question is that I've just been listening quietly to the debate, and it sounds like we are talking about a policy that we've all sat down and worked out, and then we're bringing it forward to the council. That's actually not the case. We need to remember, first up, that all councils and local government are governed by the Local Government Act. And in fact, we have the Office of Local Government that is setting a range of policy measures to try to set some benchmarks for the way in which councils operate and try to streamline them. Now, you may disagree with that. You may agree with elements. You might think that it's overreach. You might think it's not. But at the end of the day, I think it's really important for members of the public who won't have necessarily read the business papers, to be aware that this is a template from the New South Wales government. We don't have much choice but to adopt it.
Thank you,
Councillor. No, I'm sorry. I'm not appreciating some certain looks that are occurring on Zoom.
Councillor Hollywood, the way a councillor looks at you doesn't have to do with their order. So please continue, and you might divert your eyes.
Yeah, happily. So the other point that I wanted to make is that in relation to the questions and concerns that have been raised, I really think that at the end of the day, we could see many examples of where people are, there's the vexatious complainant that we see out in the community that can keep, unfortunately it's not many, but it can be one or two that can chew up an enormous amount of staff resources and time, answering questions and jumping at shadows where there is in fact the question is answered the first time round. And I will note that including in the public inquiry, we saw for people who read the reports that there were numerous submissions made by certain parties to the public inquiry, which when they were investigated with the powers of the public inquiry, which is similar to that of a Royal Commission, were fully and totally rejected. So I think that we do need to strike the right balance between being able to ask reasonable questions and receive reasonable information and be able to move on and keep going with the work of the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? If not, there's a matter before us. I'll put Councillor McGregor, you right? Yep. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. There's one matter before us, councillors. It's been moved. Councillors Hollywood and Vanderclay, relates to item number 10, councillor employee interaction policy. I'll put it all those in favour. Councillors Christie, Miles, Fernando, Hoare, McGregor, Fell, Schreiber, Bowling, Greenhill, Hollywood, Vanderclay against. Councillor Brown. Councillor Fell was in favour, by the way. I declare that carried. The next one is also moved Councillor Vanderclay, seconded Councillor Hollywood, communications and media policy. Does anyone wish to speak to this? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, this similarly concerns me. We seem to have completely blurred now the executive and the political arm of the council. So we've got the mayor now in a position where he can speak on business that is before the elected council. As the spokesperson, the mayor speaks on the resolutions of council. Once you have the idea, this is what seems to be suggested here, that the mayor could be speaking on things that are coming to council, on which council may not have come to any, hasn't come to any decision, that the mayor is not a spokesperson at that point because there is no policy to speak on. And this really bothers me, that sort of loose phrasing. I also noticed that there are times when the media manager can be briefing the CEO and or the mayor. So not tell the CEO, but tell the mayor. Well, that's also, the CEO is the CEO, is the chief executive officer. This is, the media communications are an executive and operational matter. And this is sliding away from that in a way that I find disturbing, really. I also note that there doesn't appear to be, we used to have the notion of the communications was the first and foremost thing should be that we are trying to inform our residents, to keep them informed, to keep them up to date. There's a very, that seems to have gone for it being about council's reputation. It's fine for that to be something that is of concern to the media manager. I've been in a similar role in state government where you are also protecting the reputation of the organisation, but that can never override the importance of that your role is to keep people informed of what the organisation is doing and how it's affecting them and so on. And so I just feel that the actual emphasis here is not, to me, it's problematic as well. So I don't like it. I don't like this document. I feel it's loose in some of its phrasing and the lack of clarity about the mayor's, where that spokesperson's role sits, and that the mayor is actually speaking on behalf of the council, all the councillors, and what they have resolved, not what they might or might not resolve. So for those reasons, I am not supporting this. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Otherwise, we'll put the matter Councillor Fernanda.
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, like whenever there's big news to be said, or I'm wanting to take a leap out of what we always say in the emergency services. There's one source of truth. Having the mayor as a spokesperson, I think I have no problem with it, because I think if there's too many people out there speaking out in the media, wires get crossed, misinformation is also put out there. You want one source of truth coming from one person, the head of an organisation. I don't see anything wrong with this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Van der Clay, I'll get you to take the chair for just a moment.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, you've got the, I've got the chair, you've got the floor.
Yes, councillors, essentially this is the same policy it's been since 2008 largely. The role of the mayor is defined in legislation under section 228, and you'll see this policy is completely and utterly in line with that. What the staff have added is the review of promotional material. The role of the mayor is as follows: A, to be the leader of the council and a leader in the local community; B, to advance community cohesion and promote civic awareness; C, to be the principal member and spokesperson of the governing body, including representing the views of the council as to its local priorities. Councillors, I don't really think this is at all a radical change, and I really think it confirms but advances just a little bit what we've had in place for some time. I'll resume the chair.
Yeah, you've got the chair, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Unless there's further debate, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? I'll call it councillors Bowling, Greenhill, Hollywood, Van der Clay, Hoare, McGregor, Fell, Fernanda, Christie, Miles. Against, councillors Schreiber and Brown. Declare it carried. Social media policy, it's moved Councillor Hollywood, second to Councillor Van der Clay. Councillor Christie, I think you might have wanted to speak to this.
Yeah. Have I come off mute?
The floor is yours.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I did want to speak on it. I know that it's quite obvious that this is a templated guide written by a bureaucrat off in the Office of Local Government that doesn't understand the online world. I've gone through the social media policy and it's quite unworkable and doesn't take into consideration the real world. Things like 3.14 that councillors may use more personal language. That's actually quite silly, dictating how a councillor can speak online. Some big concerns are about 3.13. Councillors may, in consultation with the CEO, upload publicly available council information onto their social media platform, which is quite a ridiculous statement considering that the publicly available information would already reside and be housed on Blue Mountain City Council's website. In section 3.16, the councillor must advise the CEO and marketing and media coordinator of any social media platforms they administer. Again, I can see the good intentions behind stopping fake profiles, but realistically, you'll never be able to police that. No matter how many bureaucrats you tell that you what social media platforms you have. Section 4.13, section N specifically mentions things that you cannot post. Section N is what constitutes as spam. However, there's no mention of the Spam Act 2003 within the entire document, which is quite a serious act, Mr. Mayor, as it is policed by APRA, and there have been numerous instances of breaches of major corporations breaching the Spam Act and the penalties that it applies. So does this section actually say that if we do send out spam across social media policy, are we going to be charged through APRA where we potentially get multi-million-dollar fines? It doesn't say, it's not specific. Another overly bureaucratic section of this is 5.11 and 5.13, where if in the instance of blocking and banning people, they first must be advised that we intend on blocking and banning them. and that they have an opportunity to respond. The most concerning line within 5.11 is that it must be considered, sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. It must be considered prior to the determination being made to block or ban them. Additionally, we have to tell them which social media platforms they'll be banned from and for how long. Again, this is just overly bureaucratic and not how the free internet works. Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you would be familiar with influxes of hate speech that you've received, particularly through Anzac Day or anti-vaxxer campaigns, where we stopped the vaxxed bus coming to the city. Mr. Mayor, I blocked numerous people, dozens who personally made threats to me, as well as mean and nasty comments about my wife and my children. Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that I should be sending them an angry email saying, be nice or I'm going to ban you. And additionally, 5.13, where a determination is made to block or ban a person from all social media platforms, that we must notify the person in writing, which is again another ridiculous and over bureaucratic notion for the ever fast-paced world of social media. I'll be voting against this policy. I'll be voting against this policy tonight.
Yes, thank you. Question to the CEO. The policy relates to council-sponsored Facebook pages and not private ones. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. It's the council's Facebook page and Facebook pages of the councillors.
Yes, that are council-sponsored, not private ones.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify that, I wasn't asking a question to make a point. It was a genuine interest. Councillor Brown.
Well, I'm going to ask a question on the top of that because I asked this before and I got a different answer. The councillors' pages are not sponsored by council. So how can you be saying it relates to council-sponsored pages? Our councillor pages are our own. We set them up ourselves.
Yes, I understand, and I'll ask the CEO to clarify this, but it doesn't relate to our own pages. It relates to those that under this policy council would authorise for us. And I know some councils already have those pages and they're not allowed to use them during election periods. We don't. We operate our own at the moment. But am I right, Ms. Toomey?
I might get Ms. Burgess to explain that point.
Yes, Ms. Burgess.
Yes, through you, Madam CEO. Yes, it's where you identify as a councillor. The code of conduct applies and this policy is supposed to apply where you have the word councillor and you're representing council as a councillor in that social media page. It's not your private page where it just has your name. It's not any other page you do. It's where you identify as a councillor for Blue Mountain City Council.
Yes, thank you.
But it's still not, so to clarify though, it is not-
Through me, Councillor Brown?
I'm looking right at you. Through you.
I haven't given you the call, but go ahead.
So we're still confusing this. It's our councillor pages. They're not council sponsored, but what you're saying is if we say councillor, yeah, Kerry Brown, blah, blah, it's not council sponsored, but that's the page you're talking about.
Yes, where you identify yourself as a councillor, and this is a point I made during the briefing, currently the code of conduct does apply to anything we say publicly as councillors, including on Facebook pages where we identify as such. All right, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Brown.
Well, I have, just to follow the questions through, because I had sort of highlighted the same more or less as Councillor Christie I had, but I want to clarify when they talk about 313 and 316 points, we're not talking about the councillor pages. We're talking about any pages that the person who's a councillor might be an administrator of that have nothing to do with council.
Any pages branded as councillor?
No, this is where a councillor of any social media platforms they administer. So that's not.
I'll take that question to the CEO.
Ms. Burgess.
Through you, CEO. Yes, if you are administrator and your name as the administrator is Councillor XXX and you're identified as a councillor, as an administrator of that page, yes, this applies.
But not if it's just identified as a personal page.
Just your name is not a councillor name. No.
Can I just ask all questions and answers be directed through me, please? Councillor Brown with another question.
No, I think that I will just speak to it now. I think
You can speak.
Councillor Christie, so that's really weird because, okay, if you administer and you're a councillor administrator, but if you're not, it doesn't apply. But none of this is clear in this policy. So it looks again like a huge invasion, like the idea that if something turns up on a page that you're administering, the council does all sorts of things on which people might share stuff from the website. As Councillor Christie says, it's a nonsense. It's not understanding how social media works, and that a lot of the pages, people can upload stuff that, you know, you don't have control. I mean, you can take it down, but it's not the idea that we now have to be watching all of this stuff, or that it could, you know, become a code of conduct because something had been put up from the council website that was now on I mean, that is just ridiculous. And okay, now you're saying it doesn't apply if it doesn't say councillor so-and-so and you're administrator just in your own personal. But I think it's just such overreach. And it is, I agree with Councillor Christie, it seems to have been written without a real understanding of, you know, the real world of social media. And also, again, it's got a big brother feeling about it to me. I really don't, it just concerns me. The sort of the detail and the sort of reaching out to every sort of page where you might pop up, and whether you're identified as a councillor or not. I mean, you could argue that if someone is a councillor, they're known as a councillor anyway, whether they put that there or not. So it's creating, I think, confusion and bureaucracy, and it could waste an awful lot of staff time. So I, like Councillor Christie, I think this is not in a good state, this policy, and it needs a rethink.
I might ask the Deputy Mayor to take the chair just momentarily, if that's all right.
Mr. Mayor, you have the floor.
All right. A couple of things to bear in mind. Remember that people have already been sued for not removing posts from their page by other people. If you have a councillor name linked to a page, and wouldn't happen on this council, but say that page on a future council had racist content that wasn't removed or moderated, it would clearly already be a code of conduct issue. And that's what this is targeted at. It is an OLG, Office of Local Government template, but again, I think there's a tendency to, the overreach is actually, in my view, in this debate going the other way. This to me is unremarkable. And it is important that we bring some order to what is a relatively new phenomenon, that is social media, and that if people are going to be out there on social media, on a branded page, that they will conduct themselves properly. As I say, I don't see this as unremarkable. It is an OLG template, and really what we're dealing with isn't the mainstream, it is the extreme. And I think that's what this policy seeks to moderate. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'll retake the chair if I may.
You have the chair again, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there anything further on this, or can we put it to the vote?
I've got a question just on that.
I'll take a question, then we might put it to the vote, I think. One more question, Councillor
Can I
Brown.
just clarify, because I'm just interested, because again, is this the template as the Office of Local Government prepared it? Or is this something where our staff have also modified it?
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Through the CEO to Ms. Burgess.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulty. No, it's the same wording as the OLG template.
Thank you. All right, councillors, Councillor Hollywood, you need to speak, do you?
I just wanted to say that yes, I do need to speak just very briefly, and in the light of the gender equity strategy, just to highlight and not forget that in fact, part of it may be an imperfect policy, but it is a policy that's needed because we've actually seen some pretty appalling behaviour by politicians in relation to basically trolling women, and they've lost their seats as a result of that. So let's not forget that, the wider context, that this is really about making sure that people behave appropriately on social media as well as in day-to-day public life.
Councillor Brown, you've already spoken. A question?
Was a question to Councillor Hollywood. I just want to clarify, how does that link to the issues of councillors sharing council website information? What's that got to do with trolling?
Councillor Hollywood didn't speak to that, so I'll rule that question out of order.
That's what we're talking about. That's actually what we're talking about.
Councillor Brown, it's out of order. All right, there's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Councillors Fernanda, Greenhill, McGregor, Fell, Miles, Hoare, Hollywood, Vanderclay. Did I miss anyone whose hand was up? Fell. Against? Councillors Christie, Schreiber, Brown. Declare it carried. Thank you. Item number 14, it's moved by Councillor Hollywood, seconded Councillor Fernanda. Councillor Hollywood has the floor.
Thank you. And I have actually brought forward a slight addition to the recommendations.
Yes.
Hoping everybody has got that in front of them. So basically, it's just that we receive a briefing on options to develop and support a community campaign around Blue Mountains Say No to Violence under the Gender Equity Strategy. So first of all, I want to acknowledge the great work of staff and also the community coming together to create this gender equity strategy. And I think that one of the things that gets lost in the context, the wider context, is in fact, we are one of very few councils that have created a gender equity strategy. In Victoria, it's quite different. They actually have legislation that will require all levels of government to report on how they're faring in relation to gender equality. But here in New South Wales, we don't have those same requirements. So it's really been up to a council like ours to take the lead, to be a progressive council. We are a progressive council in relation to the environment, but we also are a progressive council in relation to social issues. And there's nothing more important if you think about 2021, and I know we've all been overtaken by COVID-19, that we forget the dreadful way in which 2021 started with the revelations of appalling behaviour in our federal parliament. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think if we just pause for a moment and think about COVID-19 and the high rates of domestic and family violence that are being caused through this pandemic. So a gender equity strategy is not going to solve everything, but it puts a spotlight on the fact of what we can do as a community to keep women safe and to ensure that we're supporting people of all genders to be able to contribute to this community in a positive and constructive way. So I hope that people will support the additional point as well, which is really to explore what that might look like, whether we can do something more publicly as a council and with our community around saying no to violence. And I'd also like to commend the submission from Susie Van Opdorp from the Blue Mountains Women's Health Centre. I mean, everybody's had a chance to read it and time is short, so I'll just commend that proposal around supporting some kind of campaign around Blue Mountains Saying No to Violence came from Susie as well, and from the many people who attended the rally, Enough is Enough, on the 9th of June this year. So I think we should be very proud of what we've done as a council to get to this point of now having a gender equity strategy. And I hope that other councils will follow us as we go down this path. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Seconder wish to speak? Councillor Fernanda.
Thank you. Just very briefly, because Councillor Hollywood has said it all and what my sentiments are as well, which is fine because we're all on the same path with this. I'm really proud that we're adopting, well, hopefully we'll adopt this strategy as well. you know, as the Blue Mountain City Council is the forefront in so many areas, especially with our environment as well, and all the good that we do there. And I'm just thinking what a tremendous thing and an example for other local government areas and for councils to look upon us as having the benchmark of actually recognising gender equality. And it's almost saying a stance as well that, you know, we won't accept anything other than equal recognition for all genders in all roles across all industries. And for our council to be the first or one of the first to really push this ahead and adopt this strategy, I think is a tremendous thing. So I'm really proud that this has been put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Fernanda. Any other councillors wish to speak? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. Thank you, Councillor Fernanda. And I also want to recognise that Councillors Fernanda, Hollywood and Brown went to a women's conference of the Local Government Association of New South Wales early in the term. And I know that a lot of advocacy and work has gone in since that time for this. I'd also like to thank the staff. This is truly groundbreaking. It is now passed and so pleased it's done so unanimously. Item number 16, it's moved Councillor Hollywood, seconded Councillor Van der Clay, the submission. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor McGregor, then Councillor Brown. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor McGregor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Our pleasure.
I will support this this motion, but I would just like to note that we have a council resolution on this matter already that suggests the need for the airfield to remain available for use by emergency services in emergency situations, and we still don't have any commitment from any agencies of government to upkeep it to a standard where it is usable. With that, I commend the motion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Brown has the call.
Yeah, yes, I support this and I'm very appreciative of the staff for bringing it. It's really concerning that there's now been a review and an appeal of what was so unanimous from the community. I mean, they had 1,500 submissions and I think like all of them, if maybe there was 2 that weren't, but so unanimously against the commercial use of helicopters of the airfield. And so I think it's worrying that what to me seemed very spurious reasons, which was that they didn't note what people said at the forums, even though those forums were to explain the process for making a submission. And I went to those forums and there were not people there speaking against anyway. So I feel that there's something very peculiar happened. And I think it's very good that we keep reinforcing the position and the position the council has always had. I am not in the emergency services, but my understanding has been anyway that sure, it is a potential site, but it's not big enough for the water carrying aeroplanes. And the helicopters can use just about anywhere anyway. So I acknowledge what Councillor McGregor is saying, but I see that the most important thing really is that it is actually surrounded by a national park. We do need to get it back under the management of national park so it isn't having a negative impact on the surrounding parks, and that after that there can be proper consultation on the need for it as emergency services and funding and so on. But I think it's just so critical that this ongoing thing about, you know, people putting up plans for how it can be used needs to be put a stop to. And I see the only way that can happen is if it becomes part of the national park. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, I think Councillor McGregor's already spoken. Councillor Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Mr. Mark. Mr. Mayor, I have a concern that how long this has taken to be reviewed and to come back with a decision again, which should be to support the community in this, and that with the national park, it should be part of it. It's not the only airstrip that's in a national park. There's one further up the north coast. So it's not as though we're trying to do something strange here. It's the right place for it to be. So we've got use for it for water carrying helicopters and for the emergency services. And to have it within our national park after what we had through the summer bushfires would be of a great benefit to our SCS and to our RFS teams.
Yes, thank you. Councillor van der Klee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've just recently, we had a Bushfire Management Committee meeting before the COVID hit, and one of the questions I did ask National Parks at the time, one of the area managers, is that National Parks have indicated to Crown Land that they will take it on, but they have put a caveat on it. They don't want to spend any money on it because they haven't got the money to do it. But as far as the Rural Fire Service is concerned, as my role as chair of the Bushfire Management Committee, we would like to, the Rural Fire Service would like to keep it as an emergency use facility. We can put half a dozen helicopters on it. It's designed for that things where we can have water carriers there and fueling trucks and so forth, and a control centre. So yes, that was the latest position as of about a month ago.
Thank you, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My position on this has always been consistent. Unless there's an operator in there maintaining it, I don't accept that facility will be available for aviation in an emergency. From a policy point of view, I think we're better off saying that there will be no aviation whatsoever. We accept the possibility of that and it be put back into national parks. As Councillor McGregor and Councillor van der Klee have both told us that there may not be any money spent on it. We all know that national parks.
I'm sorry, Councillor Miles.
Extremely underfunded agency, a huge amount of unlimited budget. So I think there's two things to say. One, either there's no operator there and we...
Sorry, Councillor Miles, you're inaudible. I'll give you another go, but we're hearing every 10th word. No? You want to...
Okay, can you hear me?
In the video.
Very, very poor.
Okay.
Try with the camera off.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I'm not going to go on too much longer, simply to say that I just don't operate in that facility.
Thanks, Councillor Miles. Yeah, we couldn't really hear you, unfortunately. Anyone else wish to speak? There's one matter before us. I'll put it. All those in favour? Anyone against? Councillor Miles, are you against? Okay, so that's everyone in favour with Councillor Miles against. I declare it carried. Thank you. The next item that we have to deal with is item 18. That's just so that Councillor Christie can leave the room. So we'll take Councillor Christie as being out of the room. It's moved Councillor van der Klee, seconded Councillor Bowling. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Councillor Christie can resume his time in the room. Item number 24, it's moved Councillor van der Klee, seconded Councillor Hollywood. Councillor van der Klee has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is something a little bit dear to my heart. It's every age counts. It's a campaign to as the report says, to make sure that the council and the community take into consideration people of mature age, let's call them that, and that they are worthwhile to the community. They have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and as you know, in some cases you can't get a job because you're 65 years old. Now that's really ridiculous, because these people bring a lot of knowledge and so forth. And I know that we need to bring the young people up also, but it has to be consistent. So I am really pleased, and I want to thank the staff for supporting this, and how we can try to improve the organisation for our elderly community, elderly employees within the organisation, and also out in the community. And if we integrate it into some of our policy work that we do, and we are so far ahead of it, this is something that really needs to be looked at. And I would like to ask the councillors to support it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any opposition? Any further speakers? I'll put this item. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Précis of correspondence. Councillor Brown, you wish to speak to something on that?
I just want to ask a question. I don't think I'm allowed to speak.
Yeah, I'll get a mover and seconder. It's moved Councillor Fell, seconded Councillor Hua. The précis of correspondence be accepted. A question, Councillor Brown.
Through you to the acting CEO, can you tell me why the letter to Dr. Dillon from the Deputy Secretary of Better Regulation Division, saying that Safe Work will pay $76,261 in recognition of an ex gratia payment, it's not enforced, for the findings of the Ombudsman in regard to, well, it's 2 sites and 3 notices. Why that, given there's been so much coverage of the Ombudsman's report, why we don't have the letter in the correspondence?
The what in the correspondence?
The letter from the Deputy Secretary.
Okay.
Why that letter about the $76,261 payment?
Got it. Understood. Understood. CEO, in relation to the Ombudsman having to apologise and pay us some money for the outrageous conduct of Safe Work.
Not having to, being recommended.
Indeed, being recommended for the outrageous, unlawful or inappropriate behaviour of Safe Work. As revealed by the Ombudsman, would you be able to explain why the appropriate documentation doesn't appear to be there?
I believe it's missed the deadline for this particular paper and will be in the next paper.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll put the précis. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. I have a matter of urgency standing in the name of Councillor Hollywood. Outstanding customer service request, Oaklands Road, deals with safety issues. I'll declare it's urgent. It's seconded Councillor Vanderklay. Councillor Hollywood has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that everybody has received this matter of urgency. Look, it actually came up on Facebook around the 12th, the middle of July, and quite a number of people reported that they had near misses with this illegal right-hand turn that's taking place that I've tried my best to describe. And I was saying on social media that, you know, I had actually put in requests previously and that I had been following up. But it really made me feel that given the fact that many people have reported near misses and it was a safety issue, that we really do need to move it along. And I'm conscious that it probably does need to go to the local traffic committee. And so sometimes officers report that directly to the local traffic committee, safety issues, and try and find a solution. So I guess I just would like to have a resolution of council that it does get referred to the local traffic committee for consideration, and that we prioritise this issue. Oaklands Road is one of the main roads through Hazelbrook, and this right-hand turn on effectively quite a sharp bend going up a hill, it's just causing all sorts of problems, including potentially pedestrian safety, because people are driving willy-nilly over a verge and over the footpath to try and get a parking spot that's close by. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hollywood. There's no opposition to this, is there? I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. There's another urgency standing in the name of Councillor Hollywood. It relates to a vehicle using council land at the Wentworth Falls Lake. Given the COVID nature of it, I declare the matters urgent. It's moved Councillor Hollywood, seconded Councillor Hua. Councillor Hollywood, I've ruled it's urgent if you want to briefly speak to it.
Thank you very much. Again, and we've all probably seen that the lockdown is being extended for 4 weeks, but we didn't know that when I drafted this morning, this afternoon. But I basically, I would like a briefing, and I hope that others would be interested too, on what measures we might be able to take to relieve the pressure on other businesses that are operating on council land. We've got a precedent. I have put in a CSR previously, and it hasn't said that we would be able to extend it. But I think in this particular context, it would be good to have another look at it. So I hope that you'll support it.
I'm sure we all look forward to the briefing. Any opposition to this? There's none. I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. CEO, we don't have any other urgency motions, do we?
No, Mr. Mayor. No.
Thank you, Executive Officer. All right, we'll now close the meeting. It's moved Councillor Vanderklay, seconded Councillor Fell. Councillor Fernanda on adjournment, 1 minute.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge and wish the two RFS members from the Blue Mountains RFS IMT who are heading over to Canada to assist with the fires that are raging over there. Just to acknowledge them and to wish them all the best, their safety, and also our thoughts for their families as well. Not are they heading into a bushfire, but over there as well is more ravaged by COVID. So I just want to do a call out to say how proud we are, and I do wish them all the best and their families as well.
Thank you, Councillor Fernanda. I'm sure we all join with you in that, and thank you very much for calling that out. Councillors, thank you all very much. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. I bid you all a fond good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night all.
Toby, you can stop the meeting. Thank you. Good night.